We must wear the gloves so we do not touch the patina. The 1888 Commission Rifle. This thing is 6 ways to Sunday hose, and I want to show you that the average guy can bring this gun back without screwing it up too bad. We got to figure out how to get it open, how to undo this custom rear sight feature, and most importantly, how to pound this enormous dent out of this barrel jacket. Let's get on down and take a look. And remember, this is not a Mauser, it's a commission rifle. Just like somebody inventing a computer nowadays and not bothering to ask Bill Gates if he had a few ideas. Let's go. Well, like most of these projects, we're going to begin by just putting a little bit of penetrating oil on everything, and that will save us a lot of grief later. A lot of these screws have a tendency to, as they corrode, they just wedge themselves into the wood. But we're going to try to give ourselves a fighting chance here. Hang on a second. We are going to do a fade while I remove the vise. So we'll continue to coil this down. Apprentice Sheldon is in the back, firing up Thor, because when we do get this thing dynamited apart, we will begin by doing a conservation. Now, I've noticed something is that no one is looking up the word conservation on the internet. You're all looking up restorations, and to say that I'm going to restore this piece of equipment isn't exactly a truism. We're not really going to restore it. We're going to initially stop it from dying and see what we can do from there. Okay, so we'll put a little bit down here in this hole and just let it all start soaking in. And then see, now I checked this gun empty by dropping a rod all the way down the muzzle. So I inspected this gun empty as if it was a muzzle loader. So the fact that we haven't gotten this bolt open yet doesn't really scare me, because I'm pretty sure at the very worst there'd be an empty cartridge in it. Okay, so worst case scenario, blind sight unseen, there might be a live primer on a cartridge in here. It's not. Either way, we haven't pointed it at anything or anybody, but what we're going to find out about is whether or not we can get this to move. Yeah, it's moving. Okay, there it goes. I didn't know. That little bit of oil did all that good right there. Okay. All right, so all we're doing now is just trying to not break more things than we're tearing up here. Okay. Yeah, there we go. And now we can open that up and the bolt comes out the back end. And we can see that this thing is pretty nasty, but this rust went on slow. Okay, this rust has a real time. I'm just going to cross-light it here a little bit. You can see it's got a real fine grain structure to it. So the rust went on, it's gone slow, as opposed to, say, that Mauser we did about 2 years ago, where the rust went, all the rust went on a gun in about 30 seconds. And it was nasty big grain. This small grain stuff kind of protects the metal underneath it, but it's got to come off. Eventually, this rear sight, you can see it's bent, so this will be a topic unto itself. We need to be oiling back here and oiling everything else. All right, so let's just assume I'm oiling the crap out of it. The 1888 had a barrel jacket. This is not the outside of the barrel. This is the outside of an annular containment sleeve that was supposed to keep the barrel from corroding, and yet what it turned into was just a steam box. So we don't know what we got. So I'm going to reset here. We're going to bring the camera around over here, and we're going to look at dynamiting these, the barrel bands off and see if we can get this whole thing up out of the stock. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not paid, I'm not endorsing, I'm just telling you that Croyle is the best I've ever used. I'm going to continue up here and get the ramrod to where it'll rotate. These ramrods are screwed into a plate back here, and sometimes they're designed to be threaded together. You get 2 or 3 guys and they thread together. So you can see it's rotating, and I'm actually watching watching all the Glock move forward on the rod here. So I got a pretty good idea that we might be, oh, look at that noise. Okay, that's hurting. We're gonna have to do something with that. It's bent, and it's been corroded. And it was bent because obviously the muzzle of the gun got whacked. But it also tells me that the plate that this screws into is physically right here. So we'll have to remember that to see if that gets in the way. This is done with a band spring. Maybe, oh, look at that. Okay. I'm pushing in on the band spring on the other side and just lightly tapping on this. I don't want to hit this too hard. Okay. And I mean light, like I'm holding the hammer with 2 fingers and just tapping it. You don't want to beat on this stuff because it's made out of iron. And it, okay, that came away. Okay, we'll go the rest of the way up with this in a minute. This steel plate that I just uncovered, let's get the orange behind it, right there. That steel plate is what this ramrod was, right? And in the end of this, if you can see the hole in this, it's actually threaded. So you take that end of another guy's rod, thread it in there, and then you wind up building it. You take 3 of them, and you wind up with an entire cleaning rod. But it takes your squatty mates to do it. All right, so I've got another screw out here, but I haven't cut the rear end of the gun loose yet. So I'm going to go to the rear, and we're going to get those screws out of the back, because what I don't want to do is cut this support loose like on a Springfield. I don't want to cut this loose and have a 38-inch lever prying on 1 inch of that block back there. So I'm going to bring this up here, and am I still in shot? Yeah, I am. Okay, so we'll go screwdriver. Now, a little bit of time elapsed since we were off, because one of the beauties of movie magic is that you can move. Okay, that one wasn't tight at all. All right, look at that. And I'm not entirely positive that this screw actually goes into the barrel, but we'll see. It's long enough, it does. All right, and then we'll get this guy right here. Oh, look at that. Boy, did we get lucky. Because usually on these guns, these things have to be dynamited apart. All right. You see how this is all getting loose here. Get that out. Okay. This thing hasn't seen the light of day or any lubricant in a long, long time. We'll get to that. But now the barrel is sitting loose. So now we need to go forward. I'm going to turn the gun around. So we'll just hold this shot, Bruno. I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to come up to here like this, so I can get to this screw. And now the magnitude of that dent in the end of that barrel becomes very obvious. That is going to be most of this video, is taking that dent out and making a new spring for the rear sight. Okay, so we're going to go a little more coil. This stuff theoretically gets into like a millionth of an inch. People talk about using automatic transmission fluid. There's 100 different ways to do it. I just prefer to do it that way because it just seems to work for me. Okay. So you take your fingers and you just kind of plop them like that, and it makes your wrist rotate. And if you apply torque and it doesn't turn, come back in the tighten direction a couple of times and it'll knock the screws loose. Okay. All right, let's roll that, roll that. You can see all the mung right here, and what usually these screw heads, I've said it before, but we've got a lot of guys watching these videos that haven't watched our older ones, so I'm having to rehash a lot of concepts. The screw heads usually get glued into the mortise, or then it's the body of the screw, and very rarely is it the threads on the other side. If we pop this out, we might get lucky. Again, really light hammer taps. Okay, that's moving. Try to not bounce the hammer off the wood on the way in. All you're trying to do is just tap this, and you can see from the outline of this that this thing has had the ever-loving crap beat out of it over its lifetime. We'll dress that up a little bit and do what most conscientious armorers would have done. I gotta reach in front here. Okay, we can now see part of the jacket that doesn't have anything in it. All right, so I guess now we have to bring this band up forward, and we might be able to get lucky and lift the stock off. Okay, so here you have it now. Okay, Bruno's panning now, and this is what the underside of you gotta take your milsurps out of the stocks, guys. So this is all just corrosion here that we're gonna have to deal with. All right, we're gonna reset and set this back up. I had previously oiled this. I'm gonna put a little bit more there. What's becoming evident is that as this gun comes apart, it was not put away dirty or wet, because what I'm not getting is I'm not getting any rust in the annulus. All the rust we've got is on the top. So we've been getting lucky, and this thing has just been falling apart. Now, it helps that I lubed it. Again, we're going to look at that dent. That dent is pretty epic right there. We're going to have to go get that. I'm going to flip this up now, and we're going to talk about how this was put together. All right, and this jacket, and here we go, there we go. This jacket, that piece is soldered to this piece. Now, we're being allowed to just turn this, and it's actually gonna come apart. Even Bruno is shaking his head. It's like, I don't know how we got that lucky. But you gotta go at these guns nice and slow. You can see down underneath the stock line where it did not corrode, and then very heavy corrosion up above the stock line. I'm gonna take all that corrosion off and then decide whether or not this thing was in the white or not, whether or not the receiver was in the white. I don't know what the color scheme was. I'm not an 1888 guy. I'll call Devin. Devin will tell me off the top of his head. All right, so here we go. This is what's on the barrel that probably hasn't seen the light of day in a long time. And this is the rust, and some of this rust is active. The idea was that it didn't have any water to work with, but we've got live, let me relight. Here we go up there. We've got live corrosion all the way down the outside of this barrel. Now the inside of it looks pretty damn good. The inside of it is, there's a little bit of rust down here near the muzzle, which we'll scrub out down here. And other than that, this thing looks fabulous. We're not gonna break torque on the breech. We're not gonna pull the barrel out. We're just gonna convert this thing and see what we can come up with. All in all, I think that the prognosis for this weapon is pretty damn good. So we're refilling Thor because I've been out of the shop for 2 weeks, and let's just say it was getting a little gamey back there. So we dumped all of our water. So all that's heating up. It's going to be a little while before we get to that. But that leaves us with the barrel jacket. Yay. Okay. We got a little bit of verdigris there. Verdigris means that there was copper involved, which means it's probably left over from when this was brazed to this. That's where you get that green copper sulfate. You see that, you knife guys see a lot of that when you put brass near the tanning solution in leather jackets. This is soldered on. I know that from past experience. What we'll have to do, we're gonna have to make a spring because the spring is broken that tensions this. And then we'll also talk about why you don't just go back in and bang this thing straight again. This has to be heated up because when it got bent, it got work hardened. So this entire rear sight's gonna have to come back apart, and parts are gonna have to be fabricated for it. The front sight was drifted all the way over in its dovetail here. We can see that. And I have a funny feeling that the reason why the front sight was drifted over because this damage moved the front sight, and they had to compensate by sliding it over in order to shove the muzzle back this way because the sight's not attached to the barrel. This thing is just empty. So we'll convert this and take just quickly take all the rust off the outside of it so I'm not getting sagacked up. This is, hang on, I'm just by the mic, listen. You can hear that stuff popping away. So we'll go take care of this, and then we'll talk about conceptually what we're going to do about this dent and what we're going to do about it in real life. Well, I know it's cheating, but several months ago I did Devon's 88 jacket, and I went ahead and made up this brass plug here. And this brass plug is the ideated tube. I don't even know the number, but if you're going to attempt to do what I'm about to show you how to do, you already know how to operate a lathe and make this plug. Note the taper on the end of it. All right. I've got one of these made up for doing 12 gauge magazine tubes. There's all kinds of things, but what we're going to do is lift this dent from the inside. It's been work hardened like crazy, so I'm going to get it warm and just warm enough to turn the outside of the tube blue. Okay, that's hot enough. I'm not trying to melt this tube. I'm just trying to get it, I'm trying to take some of the work hardness out of it. And yeah, it was a joke. It's already blue, no shit. So here we go. We've got this plug, and what we're going to do is throw some oil on it. Hang on a minute here. Let me get that. We're going to oil down the outside of this plug here because we're going to run it up inside the tube. Now I pulled a patch up the inside of this tube. And we're just going to walk it in here and see if we have any other dents, and we don't. So this thing is going to come right up to the back side. It came up to right there. So now we know we got a dent here, so we're going to have to reposition. And we'll just keep working. I'll bring this out here. And apparently there's a dent in it here. Okay, and the dent corresponds to where a lot of our rust was. So and people ask, why do you bang on a barrel? Well, I'll tell you this, hang on a minute. When you're hitting the metal, you cause it to flow. There it is, there's the dent right there. You cause it to flow, and in light amounts, you can actually make, now you don't want to hit it too hard, and you don't want to make it thin, or else it'll oil can on you. It'll you can hear the change in pitch. So right there, it's on the plug, you see. We'll knock the plug in a little bit. So right now I'm off camera, but no, you can see me beating on it. You hear the change in pitch? Okay, so right now we're right up about here. Now we're going to pull this back in. I know Bruno just did a fabulous job of refocusing, but we're going to have to pull this back over here and get it near the vise because I need it to have a little bit of purchase to it. Keep going. Okay, I was just checking to make sure that my hammer face was polished and it's nice and smooth. You don't want to touch the outside of this with a hammer and that's got a bunch of nicks and dings in it. So I'm not hitting it real hard. I'm just hitting it hard enough to ensure that it'll loosen up and move a little bit. And you can see that dent starting to walk out. You can actually, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a line forming right there, and that line, where's the light? Right there. There's a line right there where the nose of the bullet is. So let me relight this. All right, a little fade there. We killed the overhead light so you guys can watch this develop here, okay? So as we're knocking this anvil in, this is a big dent we're moving. So we just keep playing with it. See, now our old line was there, and our new line is up here, and you can see where it's beginning to move, right? Okay, now I got to come down a little bit harder on this. We don't want to squash this, so you got to keep it all round, right? A little bit more. Okay, and we keep moving the plug. Now the way I typically do this is I'll pick it up and I'll bang the end of this rod back here on the floor, and I would let the weight of this jacket do this, but we've moved that dent from here all the way to there. Now I'm gonna unrack it out of the vise for a second, and we're gonna fade because I'll come right back. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour some more oil down in this thing. We're gonna get it hot again. Because when you beat on this metal, it does a lot of work hurting. Why is that? There it is. Big shiny spot right in the middle of it. You see it? Yeah. So on and so forth. And that last hammering moved the line from here up to here, and we just keep doing this and it'll keep lifting. Now I'm gonna get this thing hotter, and I also want to tell you one other thing. This is not a barrel. This is a barrel jacket. This is not how shotgun barrels are undented. That's a different video for another day. This is essentially what you do to a shotgun barrel, but you are a lot more polite about how you do it. You see it coming up. If you tried to use a shotgun barrel dent razor on this, this would have exploded. This is not a very thick tube. You hear that right there? That noise right there is where we are on top of the mandrel, and this noise isn't. Okay, we're going to drive it in a little bit more. Okay. Nose of the plug is right here now. Now bringing this back out, we're not just going to haul this out. This is going to require quite a lot of commotion to get out. I'm getting oil on my cigar. That ain't worth the hoot. Okay. Right now, the end of the plug is right there, you see? And we've taken that entire dent and lifted it most of the way out. And I'm going to reset this and grab it a little bit harder. Well, that's pretty damn round right there. I see a little dent right there on the camera, right there. So what we'll do now is we'll start backing the, this out. Hang on a second. So now I want to back the wedge up. So we back the wedge up till it's sitting underneath that dipsy doodle. And then we can go ahead and pound that dipsy doodle out. Difficult to show this on camera, but I think we've done a pretty good job. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to need. I think we've done a pretty good job. So let's look at the top of the line up against the blue part of the vise there. And we'll see, let me get a little bit lighter here. We'll see that that's pretty damn round. All right, so now that we've done this and we've heat bloomed it and done a couple other things, we'll degrease this tube and then get some rusting solution on it and allow it to frog up for an hour or so in my box, and we'll turn it orange, boil it. When I come back here, this thing will be jet black again. I got tons of videos up on how to do that. I'm not going to revisit that here. I want to show you how to get this dent out and still be able to reuse the tube. We have conserved the entire gun, and I want to make a comment about the difference between conservation and restoration. I'm not restoring anything. I'm just stopping this thing from dying. That's a conservation. A restoration would be to run this whole gun back to where, you see how beautiful this is right here? That's what the gun looked like when it was new. I mean, look at that bluing. That's stunning. But what we're going to get is this series of pits, because we cannot, the gun can only be polished once, and that's when it's new. And then after that, all you do is make it look worse. So we're conserving it, not restoring it. I had to use a restoration word just to make this video searchable. All right, so there's a problem that comes along with a lot of these 1888s, is that there's a piece missing. We have the cocking piece that's threaded into, here, let's get that in. That'll go in there like that. Then this thread's on the back of that, okay? Well, there's a piece missing here, and the piece is this bolt head. So you can see that the two bolts are the same length, except this bolt head is missing, and this bolt head can be taken off. You have to take the firing pin out, and I don't want to do that. This is a bolt to another gun, and we'll get back to why that's here in the first place. But the thing to notice is that since both of these bolt bodies are the same, and both of these firing pins are the same, there is a possibility that you can chamber. There, the headspace is right here, okay? It's right, but when you move over here, there's 3/8 of an inch, but a non-damaged, non-alterated. See how the end of that firing pin's been bent over? And that's a good thing, because if you don't clip this firing pin and you leave it in there, we can argue the vagaries about how this firing pin would make contact with that, whether or not it's in far enough. But what you would have is a gun going off. Let me rotate this and give this to you in the right orientation here. There, the two bolts are the same. You can see the locking surface here and here, right? You'd have this gun going off 3/8 of an inch out of headspace. And that would blow gas all back into the chamber area, down into the mag well. It would blow the sides of the stock off. And plus, we don't know what the heck else it would do to anything else. And I'm going to tell you, their idea of a gas deflection system on this gun is this tab right here that's sticking out the side of this, the back end of this bolt. That tab's function in life was to grab the gas coming backwards along the bolt and deflect it away from your eyes. That was their idea. This is long before anybody thought about drilling holes in the sides and all that other stuff. So if you blow a cartridge up, you'll get fragged. Because of that, the next step that's about to happen would be we would assemble the bolt, we would assemble the fire control group down on the bottom, we'd take this thing out and we would strap it to a test stand and pop a couple of rounds into the ground and make sure the headspace was right, that it would undo without us touching it. We would do it without the jacket on it. Why submit any more of the gun to damage? No stock. I've got a rig. In fact, I've got an entire video about setting this rig up and popping rounds into the ground. But in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're going to take this rifle outside. We'll take it out of its stock because it needs to be test fired. It's an 1888. The bolt that's in it is a complete mutt. So this is a German gun with a Turkish marked bolt, and the bolt had to come off a Chinese. Now, we've covered the gamut of 1888 part supply chain issues here. So what we're going to do is take this gentleman's rifle out of the stock, take his jacket off, set this thing up and pop it off the test stand, and we'll use this gun as a proxy for this one. Then we'll come back in and keep going. This gun's going in a museum, so they don't want it to run anyway, even though I have found an N-block loading clip for it, and I have found a firing pin, and I have found all the things necessary to put this gun back in operation, and I found a bolt head for it. And then this gun will go up on a test stand, but it'll be a place where the impressions have long since gone away, and this video isn't being shown to anybody anymore before we get around to test firing it. So that's kind of where we're at. Okay. Another round, please.
You want a slow-mo of it going off? Ready.
We got it back off the test stand. We haven't broken anything. This is not the 1888 that we were working on, but we did prove this. And, you know, if we want to get down a little bit further inside this thing and see how it works, let's take a look because, you know, Bruno does do animations. The very earliest of the packet loading designs, this particular setup is actually pretty simple. You have a very large cocking piece, and that is released with a two-stage trigger. Well, up two right there, bang, and off it goes. Now, we'll continue to expend the cartridges out of this. Note that the bolt head does not rotate, only the locking lugs rotate, and the safety actually cams the cocking piece off the head of the sear. This prevents it from dropping. Now, if you work on that sear, you're going to have a problem because the safety won't come back far enough, and then you will be in a world of hurt. All right, let's go ahead and stroke a couple more cartridges through this thing, and then we can get up to the end. This particular weapon has the packet loading system. It has this one. It's not modified. So now when you run the last round in, all the upward force disappears and it falls out the bottom of the gun. Our particular gun has a small coil spring on the bottom of it designed to pop the mag out the top because that huge hole in the bottom was a mud problem. If you really want to see this gun talked about, get on over to See an Arsenal and look up their 1888 episode, and you will find a heck of a lot more than I know about it in terms of its history and function. This brass stitch is there because this sight had gotten bent. Now, this is the sight off the gun we're working on. And we'll try to get a close-up here. I'm not going to guarantee, but there's actually a tear right here at the bottom of this notch. This sight was probably bent back cold and snapped. What I want to warn you guys about, and I've warned you before, is there's a lot of work hardening that went on here. So let's get over to the machining vise and heat this thing up and bend it back. I just want to show you that you've got to do that. There's a tear right there in the bottom of that notch. And what I don't want to do is in this work hardened state, bend this back, snap it in half, and I'm back to where I was on the other gun. Now, I didn't make that repair, but I don't want you to have to make it either. So let's take a look here at this temper chart. And this is showing all of the colors in the tempering scheme. And we're going to sneak up on this. You see how close together the numbers are as we go from yellows into the reds, the purples, and the blues. Very quickly transitions that. Then there's another 100 or 2 degrees later, and now we're up into the incandescent part here where we're starting to actually make the metal glow. We don't need to make it glow. We just need to make it come up enough so that it's on the other side of that blue, and that will draw the temper on this enough to allow us to pop it back without really scamming up on it. So the way we've got to do that is we're going to just polish this, the face of this down until it's silver, and then I'll show you how that knocks back. Taking a little bit of sandpaper and I've just sort of sanded this silver. This is the side that faces the muzzle when you shoot the gun. So if somebody can see this and they comment on the fact that you've kind of messed with the finish on that a little bit, remind them that they are looking down the muzzle. Okay. So 2 things here I want to make sure that I show. One of which, there's a spring here that allows the sight setting handle to come back. You've got to take that spring out because we will get this hard enough to draw the temper on it. And all we're going to do now is take a torch and light up here. There we go. And as we wave across this, all we're doing is waiting to see the, now this has a lot in common with like when we do screw heads. And also remember that this side, a lot of the heat's being wicked off by the vise. But all I want to do is get that to turn blue in the center. And it'll get there. Now that temperature transition is very, very fast. There it goes. There it goes. It's blue up around the notch. And then it'll go all the way up to gray. And we can kill these lights here. Grab that light switch, will you there? Okay. We can kill these lights here and make sure that we're not heating it up into the reds. There it is. Turn the lights back on. Okay. And now we can see that it's definitely blue here. We'll come a little bit more on this. There it goes right there. So now I've got it that blue color. That's all the more we have to go. A little bit more. A bit more of a bend back. Now I've got a straight line. I've got a straight line across here. We've got a little bit of bow in it, and we'll take it out and pop it in a vise here. We're just going to give it a little more heat and shut this off. And we'll wait for this to cool down. Now it's dragging heat off like crazy into the vise. Now Bruno was sitting there looking at it and indicating that I needed to pop it up like this, except this isn't going to go up. It's just going to rotate here. So once this cools off, we'll grab it with a pair of pliers here. Here we go. We'll just grab it right here like this. Run it over here in the corner. And just grab it like that. And once we do that, I can't touch it. It's hot as all get out. But we went ahead and took the slight bow out of it. And now we're straight. Now we're bowed. And the side of the sight you can see, you can't even tell we did this to. Except for the fact that we haven't had to braze it back together again because, well, you know, we went ahead and we're stupid. All right, let's set this aside. So as we sit right now, we're kind of at a stopping point. The metal has been conserved. Parts that were bent have been pounded up. Parts that were really bent have been pounded up. And the gun's kind of at a standstill because we don't have all the parts necessary to operate it. So this is kind of where we stop for right now. Now in the interim, all the parts will show up. We'll hang this thing on a test stand like we hung the other one on the test stand. And when it doesn't blow up, Then we'll talk about exerting the effort necessary to conserve the wood. There are a lot of things that I'm trying to get across to guys that haven't gotten into this before, which is the fact that you have to expend your resources conservatively. And in this particular place, and I've had this happen to me, we expend 25, 30 hours worth of effort, and then we find out that there's an end of game problem up inside the gun. So we're going to stop here, and the next time you see this gun, we will have taken this action up on a test stand with a new bolt head, a new extractor, and a new ejector, and we get all that running right, and then we'll get into how you get this particular stock here has never been screwed with, but it's got years and years and years of oils and fats. So we'll talk about saponification and the use of soap. And until then, it's been a pleasure to take you guys down a short rabbit hole with an 1888 Mauser. Outstanding.